Today on Duke's Garage, we'll be changing the oil on this 2011 Mercedes-Benz C300. Definitely a job you could do yourself. Save a good bit of money as opposed to taking it to a Mercedes-Benz dealer, which would probably be about 10 times what it would cost you to do it at home. You may not want to trust some of the quick lube spots with your precious car, but yeah, I've changed this oil in this car, since its purchase, and this is the wife's car, and had absolutely zero problems. It's been a great car. Really no problems whatsoever. Just routine maintenance, which is just spark plugs, oil, tires, brakes. But this has been a fabulous, reliable vehicle. And definitely has, the perks of a car that was built to drive on some pretty intense roads in Europe. So today we'll jump into changing this oil. I'm gonna rate this probably a 3 out of 10 in difficulty. If you're able to turn a few wrenches, this should be a job you can tackle as long as you have the proper equipment. Okay, the items you're going to need to complete this job. To get the car off the ground, you'll need to get the front wheels up. You'll need a jack and a jack stand, or what I prefer are these ramps, which are really handy and quick. They're not particularly tall. These might be a 10-inch ramp. I'm not quite certain exact height, but plenty high to get the car up to do what I need to do. Of course, oil and an oil filter. So this car will call out 0W40. You should definitely be using a fully synthetic. Mobil 1 is a recommended oil for these cars. I typically also use the Mercedes-Benz dealer, the factory oil filter on this car, but I got a free filter when purchasing this oil, and so today I'm going to go ahead and use this Mobil 1 filter. I have used these before in the past, but most times I'm putting the Mercedes-Benz filter in there. Just a little voodoo in my mind. I think that the Mobil 1 filter didn't give me any issues as far as I can tell. Seems to be a well-constructed oil filter. The Mercedes-Benz filter, you can definitely see a little bit more, when you just look at the construction of it and some of the extra little things they add to it. Yeah, it's a nice filter. So, it's twice as much as this Mobil 1 filter, but, for the peace of mind, I find it to be worth it. You'll need something to collect your oil in. I have this handy little catch pan slash container, which works real nice. You're going to need something that's going to at least be able to catch about, I would say just to be safe, 10 quarts, but these cars take 8.5 quarts of oil. So that explains why we have 2 of these bottles here. These are 5-quart containers. Now you could buy a 5-quart. I get this from Walmart. It's about $25 for 5 quarts. If you buy a single, they're around $9 a piece. So you could buy a 5-quart, and then I guess you need 3 more singles. But you get 3 singles at around $27. I mean, you might as well get 5 quarts and have a couple quarts extra, just in case you need to top the car off or save it for your next oil change. So I do eventually get to a point where I only need to buy 1 of these because I have leftover oil from prior oil changes to cover me. So yeah, it's it is kind of a pricey oil change even to do yourself. So you can imagine that you're already looking at $50 worth of oil here plus a $10 oil filter. You know what I mean? So you're already up to $60 right there, which for most other cars, $20, $30 will get you through it. You know what I mean? But it is a Benz. Your owner's manual, just to confirm your specs. Usually in the back of the manual there'll be a specification area, and let me jump to this page right quick. Alright, here we go. So I'm going to go ahead and put this up on the screen for you, but this car is a C300, takes 8.5 quarts of oil. So that, you just want to confirm that you're putting the correct amount in. Definitely putting, too little oil is obviously not good. Putting too much oil in the car is obviously not good. So you want to hit it, as close as possible, and of course verify it with the dipstick. And this car does have a dipstick. Okay, next you're going to need just a few basic common tools. I mean, a ratchet, a 13mm socket. You're going to need an 8mm. I'm using a 1/4 inch. This is to remove the little panels that are underneath the car, which I'll explain why those are so important later. I really like this thread sealant, and this has kept me from having any leaks around the oil plug. So I use this every time. I reuse the same plug. I just put that sealant on there, and I've had 0 leaks. This here oil filter wrench, not the right tool for this job. Mercedes has something that looks similar to this guy, which sits on top of the cap. It has one of those, I believe it's called an internal type filter or a canister filter. It's not the screw-on type filters, which you're seeing less and less of nowadays. But European cars in particular have always had these canister type filters, which I'll show you later. And they have these caps. Some of them have, like the BMWs, will have a hex head on the top, which you can use a socket to remove. The Mercedes one does not have that. It has these flat edges around the sides, similar to like a bolt, but you drop that on top and you break it loose. This is not the correct size, and I'm perfectly happy using this little workaround as opposed to buying a Benz special tool. So protect your hands. I like rubber gloves. Obviously it fights off the oil better, but you can also use some work gloves, some safety glasses just in case you have some spills. Make sure that you responsibly recycle your oil. I have this nice catch canister. This one is actually a Harbor Freight model. I think it's like a $25 item. I'll put a link in the description in case you'd like to take a look at it, maybe buy one for yourself. But these are great for recycling oil. My local parts stores such as AutoZone, and here in Texas we also have a company called O'Reilly. They accept the used oil. So I take it into them, dump it into their container, and they send it out to be recycled. So definitely recycle responsibly. Don't just throw it in the trash, but catch it somewhere, take it to somebody who's going to have it properly recycled. All right, let's get under the car. We need to take her for a quick ride to warm her up. It's a cold engine. It's of course important to get the car warm, get that oil nice and loose and flowing, which will help pick up any impurities and just allow it to flow better out of the oil pan. So just the viscosity of the oil will be a lot smoother and easier whenever it's heated up as opposed to it being cold. Now this isn't a terribly thick oil, so it's not maybe as important as say if you're using a 10W30 oil or something like that. It has a little bit thicker consistency about it, but just as a matter of practice, you can see on here, let me zoom in for you a little bit, that old Duke's been a bad boy. I'm way past on my my oil change, and let me see here. Okay, so I'm going to zoom in here. Oops, I also got a bad light to deal with. Alright, so you can see I've exceeded my regimen, which is every 10,000 miles with this oil. I'm over 3,900 miles. I've been spending a whole lot of time getting this new YouTube channel up, and have neglected to change this oil, so well past due. Now, this is a service BM, and I'll cover what that means, but primarily it's an oil change, and there are some other things like filters and whatnot that you may want to change at this point in time. And you can also reset this light, and I'll give you a link in the description on instructions on how to reset your service light. I'm back from a quick spin, and we're up around normal operating temperature now, which is right where we want to be to go ahead and drop this oil. If you've been driving, let's say a long distance, and you come in and want to change your oil, just beware. You may want to let it cool off actually a little bit, because the oil will be smoking hot coming out of there, and it's a good way to burn your hands if you get anything, or your skin if you get anything on you. So I kind of prefer to take a cold engine out for a quick ride, come back, and usually that's, the oil's not terribly hot where it will actually scald you coming out. But if you've been driving around town and come back in to change your oil, you may want to give it about 5-10 minutes, kind of just to cool down a bit, and then go ahead and break it loose. All right, we're gonna put her up on the ramps and get underneath the car. All right, so we got the car up on the ramps. Now it's time to get underneath the vehicle and start removing the little protectors, the little panels down here. And it's always smart to get yourself a couple pieces of cardboard or something to protect you. If you're doing this out in your driveway like I'm doing, something to protect the inevitable splashes of oil that'll come down. And if you have a homeowners association like I do, who don't seem to like any kind of oil on your driveway, you definitely want to protect your driveway and keep from getting a citation or a notice. So, also it's a good time to just take a look on your car. Like I can see here on the tires, the front, it's definitely seeing some wear on the inside of these tires. It's definitely getting to be about time. On this side here, you can really see the wear. So yeah, probably also a symptom of maybe some time to take a look at some of these suspension parts. Could be getting a little loose. This car has 160,000 miles on it, and as I mentioned, it really hasn't needed anything. It's not had any breakdowns or problems. But with that kind of mileage, it's definitely time to take a look at that suspension and maybe freshen up the suspension parts. But yeah, these tires on the back, the tires definitely will wear on the inner because there's camber on the rear tires, so the inners will just naturally wear. You can't really rotate them because they're directional, and the back tires are larger than the front tires, so you can't swap them front to back, back to front. So they're staggered. But back to our oil change. Yeah, we're underneath here. So these are these little panels here that we have to pop loose. They're held with these little. Just gonna get you a good shot of it. Let me see here. Here you go. So right here, these little 8mm screws that you have to pop out. There's a series of them underneath the vehicle. I'm going to remove these panels and then I'll show you where the screws are at. But if you have a variable speed drill with an attachment on it, that can really help speed this along. I'll show you what I'm talking about right here. And if not, just do it the old-fashioned way with the wrench or with the ratchet wrench and the socket and pop them loose, and we'll then reveal the oil pan. Alright, so we have the first of two panels, kind of splash panels if you will, off the car. This is the underside. That's the when you're facing the car, and the first panel is held by 6 of these little screws, 8mm heads on them. They're not, they're nothing, no big deal. I mean, a small little wrench was plenty to break these loose. But this panel is really important because cars like these, that are really designed to go at high speed, especially in places like in Europe where you have like the Autobahn, it helps create the underside of the car to be as aerodynamic, I guess you'd say, as the upper side of the car, because without these panels on the lower side of the car, you have opportunities for pockets of air to form under the vehicle whenever it's moving along. Now at 70 miles per hour, this is not a big deal, it's not a problem, but if you're on an Autobahn, you're doing 100, 120, it could be a big problem because air could get trapped up in the engine bay and create lift, and you start to have a stability issue where the front of the car is lifting. Alright, so another thing I'm going to do now is come up top, and we're going to pop off this little engine cover that reveals the canister for the oil filter. Also, I like to crack the filler neck open, allow some air to flow through. This will help the oil escape quicker. See if it's flowing a little better. Actually, we're almost done there. It's coming out pretty rapid, so we're already dropped a whole ton of oil. So now it's time to change out our oil filter. Alright, so the proper way to remove this guy was something that's obviously smaller than this, but sits on top of here, matches up with the flat sides. We'll have a little socket adapter and crack it loose. But old Duke kind of has a little MacGyver in him, so I just use my oil filter wrench and just break her loose that way. But you can see that over time I have put some scratches on there, and if you want to keep your cap looking nice and pretty, you'll go ahead and buy the special tool if you're not so particular about it. Like myself, you can get away with this, but I am warning you that I'm not using a factory solution to remove this cap, so do it at your own risk. Alright, so here is the Mercedes Benz. That's actually a Benz filter. You can see some of the stringing extra things they add to their filters just to kind of make them a little bit more stout and stand up. So we're going to pop that out, and then we'll go cover replacing the filter. There's some rubber gaskets we're going to need to pop loose. We'll cover that as well. Alright, so I pulled the filter out and set it in this box here just so I could just demonstrate what's going on. You can put this on your workbench or inside of oil pan. This is a side note: if you don't have one of those catch pans like I have, you can use a couple of these oil pans, but you're going to need some quick hands to be able to move the pans along as one gets full and drop the other one in. So a lot cleaner and easier just to have a larger oil pan to catch this oil. I forgot to mention also at the top of the video, you will need either some picks. There's some picks here, or just a little screwdriver, because you're going to need to remove these seals here and here. There's 3 seals. When you get your new filter, it's going to come with an assortment of seals. You can match them up and replace them. So essentially all we're going to be doing is taking, say, a pick, and take this pick here, and we're going to pry it right on off and pop these off. So let me pull these seals right now. The old seals off. Now it's time to put the new seals on. So it's simply just pulling them on around there. So you got that all seated nicely. Then your next one, these are a little bit more tricky, and using a pick tool actually makes this go a little easier. So I'm going to use my little pick tool just to lift it up and encourage it over the lip. And kind of encourage it around. So that's the second one. And the last one is pretty easy because it's right there at the tip. And I always work, top down. So I'll start with the top one, second one, the last one. So that way you don't have to cross over any other seal, especially these 2 seals. You don't want to have to cross this seal to get to that seal. It makes it a little bit more difficult. So do the top one first. And there you go. So then you have all your seals in place. Fill filter in there nice and easy, and it's ready to go back in the vehicle. I'll take a little bit of oil here, run it around just to make it run a little smoother. Slide it a little easier. Sit it down there nice and easy. Start it by hand, of course. And make sure that you're properly threaded. You definitely don't. So start it by hand, and then work it around. It'll bottom out when it meets up with the canister. Crazy. Alright, now we're going to pull out this oil. Of course. And you can see my plug is sitting here waiting for me. Oil's down below. I can dump that into my canister for recycling. So now we're going to clean up this oil plug and load it up with some new clean thread sealant and screw it back in. Find yourself a place where you can clean up your plug. I'll spray it with some carb cleaner, use a little wire brush just to make her nice and clean and purty. Go back, and we'll take the brush, obviously, work it across the threads, get it cleaned up. I have our thread sealant. I get this from my local AutoZone, and it's hanging up in the front, usually around where you're meeting up with the guys or gals to look for a part or whatever. They have those little racks there. So I put a dab of this onto the threads and work it around. And I concentrate more towards the top of the plug, because at the bottom, that's going to be going inside the pan into the oil. So really where you want that sealing is up towards the top side of it. So that's really where I concentrate adding the thread sealant. Use any of your bolts by hand, including your lug nuts, anything you're working on. Make sure you have it threaded properly. So you can see I ran it all the way down by hand pretty much. And I just give her a nice little snug. Don't go crazy. Don't want to strip this thing out. It's a nice little snug. That's plenty. Clean up some of the excess thread locker. And that's that. Clean funnel oil. Take your time so it doesn't splash out. Now, what's handy with these is there are measuring marks on these. And so there's 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then up here would be your 5th. So whenever you start to pour this thing down, 1, 2, 3, somewhere in here would be your half mark. So that's about where we want to pour it. So I'll pour some down, keep checking this on a level surface, keep pouring down, checking it till I get it to around that point there. So I know I put 3.5 more quarts to keep the 8.5. Okay. My little bag here just to wipe up any little drips. If anything drips along the way, cleaning that up. And we're going to drop the hood, run her down off the ramps, and take her for a quick spin. Bring her back. And back here is your oil dipstick. So you can check your oil. Down there is your level. So let's take it for a ride, let that oil circulate, let it sit for about 5 minutes on the flat surface. I'll come back and take a look to make sure we're hitting the required levels. Okay, we're all set here. Make sure you check around the engine bay. If you dripped any oil anywhere, make sure you wipe it down. Make sure your cap is snug. We have the front cover back in place. Before we can drop this thing off the ramps and take it out for a spin, we're going to need to replace these little kind of splash pans / aerodynamic safety pans. I don't know if you know the name of these things, but We do need to put these covers back underneath the car, so it's pretty much reverse of removal. Locations are, so you got these here by the steering rack. These two in the front one, this is the back one by the oil pan. These two are not. These two here share a common hole with this pan. I think there's one that shares common hole. Yeah. Let's see here.
Welcome to our channel. We are Duke's Garage. We are talking tools and into fixing cars. Make sure that you subscribe, cause all the stars you'll see. If you've got a project, this is where you wanna be. Duke's Garage. Welcome to Duke's Garage. Yeah, we're talking cars.